Greetings, Padawan. We're on our last writer, Frank Norris. And so remember that literature is a pendulum that swings back and forth. And so Frank is at the end of our pendulum that we're going to be looking at in this course. And he is an interesting guy because his writing is brutal in the same sense that Stephen Crane's writing is brutal. But it's talking about similar concepts, but different. So let's talk about who Frank Norris is. First of all, Frank Norris was born into a wealthy Chicago family. His father was a farmer who had turned into a very, very profitable jeweler. His mother was an actress and a teacher. And so he grew up, with all of the things that Mark Twain did not have, right? So he had, elite schooling, and he had opportunities, and he was like a putz. Like, he didn't do that well in school, but because his family had money, he was given opportunities to go to schools that many of us would never have been allowed to go to if we had screwed around as much as him. Even his friends were like, he's not good with dates, he's not good with money, and they all kind of covered for him because, he was part of that class. So his parents end up getting divorced, and so he goes with his mother, and so the father kind of like cuts him off. So he leaves school because of lack of money, and he moves out west, and he's living as a bohemian, sort of like a hippie during the gold rush. And then he becomes, like many of our other writers, he becomes a journalist. And so he goes to Africa and Cuba. And so his writing is probably one of the best examples of naturalist writing, because he's writing about how the effects of money and our greed as a country, that the rising greed of the country is renders people helpless to that system. So he writes a lot about farming and agriculture and westward expansion and the railroad companies and how dishonest they are, to cut through people's land, and sort of the battles between agriculture and big business and the railroad and all that. So he's writing about that. And then he writes this novel called McTeague. And I want to show you the picture because I think this picture is stellar. So let me tell you about McTeague. So McTeague is a dentist. That's this guy here. He's a dentist, and he's best friends with a guy named Marcus. And Marcus brings a girl named Trina out to visit McTeague, and Trina and McTeague, fall in love. So it starts off, it's a story about, their courtship and then their marriage. And then, but Marcus also had a crush on Trina, right? And so, but McTeague wins her love. And so right before they get married, Trina wins $5,000 in the lottery. Now, $5,000 in 1900, I can't even figure out what that is in today's money, right? So it's a lot of money. So Marcus is mad because he feels that money should be his because he knew her first. And he should have married her, but she marries McTeague. But she's very shrewd with her money, so she won't let anybody touch the $5,000. They live off of his earnings as a dentist, and then the very little income that comes in off the interest of the $5,000. And then she becomes obsessed, and today we would look at it as OCD. She becomes very obsessed with penny pinching and saving money. So she hides the money she saves in a box, and is all secretive about it. There's one classic scene where she takes out all her gold coins because she wants to play with them and feel them. So she throws them in the air and she lays them over her bed, and then she rolls around naked. Now remember, this isn't today. So this picture alone is completely inappropriate, and to the sensibilities of the people of the time, right? So, she's naked, rolling around in money. So Marcus, of course, is, consumed by jealousy, and he and McTeague fight a lot. By the way, McTeague is never given a first name, which is interesting. So sometimes I call him Mac, but everybody's kind of called Mac. So McTeague and Marcus fight, and then they get in this big fight, and McTeague, he always wins. McTeague always wins. He breaks Marcus's arm. So Marcus is going to leave town, but before he leaves town, he comes back, and it looks like they make up. But what you don't know is that on the way out of town, Marcus tells the authorities that McTeague actually doesn't have a degree in dentistry, and so McTeague is forced out of practice. So he can't work as a dentist. So, now this, Mobley moving up. Remember, a lot of these works are about people moving up the ladder and then sliding back down the ladder. So now they're falling down the ladder and into poverty. So, McTeague and Trina fight all the time. And then finally they get into some big fight about money, and McTeague kills Trina, beats her to death, brutally beats her to death. So Marcus finds out that Trina's been beaten to death, so he goes on a hunt to find McTeague and bring him to justice, and he wants the money. So he finds him in Death Valley, which is a desert, and they get in a fight, and McTeague kills Marcus. But as Marcus is dying, he handcuffs himself to McTeague. So the end scene is McTeague alone in this desert, Death Valley, handcuffed to a dead man that he killed. So obviously, this story is brutal for the time period in which it's written, and it like many other things that we've read, they had a hard time getting it published because it is criticizing the social class of the people who would read such novels, right? The leisure class are the ones who read these novels. The leisure class are the ones who go and buy Kate Chopin's book or go buy McTeague, right? So these are hard pills to swallow because it's talking about them. So he finally gets it published because, of course, he's friends with Henry James and other folks like that. So finally gets it published. And it is probably one of the best pieces of naturalist writing about how our greed as a nation, what that looks like, in humans, right? How that sort of translates and transfers to the human condition, talking about different layers of mental illness, different layers of obsession, and domestic abuse, things like that. So, and so this idea that things become violent when they don't work out, that's the human condition. That really is the end of, that is really the point of what Norris is trying to say. And that's interesting because now we're going to be going into a war, right? Now we're going into another war. And just like the Romantic period ended at the Civil War, some people say that the realist naturalist period ends with the beginning of World War I. Some say it happens after World War I. But now we look at war writing. And that's the next section of writing that we look. That's the next genre of literature that we study. So, the main point about Norris's work, I think, is: do we think that literature should teach a lesson? We'll call it didactic, right? Should it teach a lesson, or is it meant just to inform, or is it meant to entertain, right? So, are we supposed to learn something when we're done? Are we supposed to just be entertained? Like, is it just a good feel-good story or a feel-bad story? Or should we take action? What is the purpose of writing? And when we think about Norris, we think about, like, what should we do after we've read this? Should we not expand westward? Should we not create railroads? Should we not play the lottery? What are the lessons that we're supposed to take away from this? So that's one of the reasons that I like Frank Norris, and that's one of the reasons why he's in the canon. So I hope you enjoy his work, and I look forward to seeing what you have to say about it.